Welcome to Break Everything. Your host, Lisa L. Levy, will guide you through critical thought conversations and a journey of directed disruption that makes a difference. Experience bold conversations with industry leaders who are willing to challenge the status quo.
Hello and welcome. I'm very excited to have everybody here today, and I'd like to introduce you to our first guest, a friend of mine who is willing to take this experiment and make it real. I'd like to introduce you to Lisa Replogle. She is the Chief Information Officer for HonorHealth hospitals in the Phoenix metro area. She's been with Honor since 2015 and has just taken on the role of CFO. In this role, she has oversight for finance, accounting, revenue cycle, payer contracting, and the supply chain functions. Prior to being at HonorHealth, she served as the CFO for the Center for Orthopedic and Research Excellence, known as the Core Institute, and began her career as an auditor in the Arizona office of the Auditor General and did some time with Ernst & Young. She has over 15 years of healthcare management experience, holds her CPA and her Bachelor of Administration degree from the University of Arizona. In her free time, not that she has a lot of it, she serves on the Desert Mission Board of Directors and as a director of the Arizona chapter of Healthcare Financial Management Association. She is a single parent, and her only child is getting ready to graduate from high school this spring and begin her academic experience in college. Lisa, thank you so much for being here with us.
Oh, thank you for having me, Lisa.
All right. We've known each other for a number of years, and I am so grateful that you're here and experimenting with me and having this experience.
Oh, I'm so honored.
We're going to have fun. Tell us a little bit about your background, right? I did the official stuff, but how is it that you ended up in healthcare? What brought you to this industry?
Sure. I'm going to back up even a little bit further and start with my college career. So I bounced around. I actually went into college thinking I was going to get a degree in psychology. And then I realized I was going to have to hold experiments and really talk to people. So I quickly pivoted and changed and ended up going into accounting. And my last year in the accounting, I had this massive panic of what am I going to do? I also picked up finance. And so didn't know where to go from there, and was lucky enough to get a job with the Auditor General's office, and then actually did transition over to Ernst & Young. And it was during my time at Ernst & Young where I was kind of directed into healthcare. They have different segments of kind of learning paths, whether you go the for-profit route, whether you go not-for-profit. And so I was not-for-profit, and that led me into healthcare. And I found I really enjoyed it, really liked the people I was working with. I ended up having a client offer me a position. That's what really got me over into the actual hospital side of things. And I've pivoted a little bit. I, at one point, was working for a company that was software sales, and got pregnant with my daughter and actually stayed home for a period of time and was a stay-at-home mom. And I got bored out of my mind and formed my own little consulting company, and that kept me active. And during that time, I went through a divorce, and in terms of, sheer panic, because I had been a stay-at-home mom, one of my friends who I had worked with at the past at one of the hospitals, her then husband was forming a new was working for a company that needed some assistance. And so my consulting that I was doing at that point really played well into that. That's actually what led me to the Core Institute, and where I kicked off, this new stage of my life. And I was there for 5 years, worked my way up to CFO, came over to HonorHealth wanting to be a little bit of a smaller fish in a bigger pond, and started as associate vice president of finance, worked my way up to vice president of finance. And now I have the pleasure of becoming their CFO.
And in the time that you've been with HonorHealth, you've been coached and guided. The CEO, when you were hired, was actually the CFO.
Correct.
Right. And so you've been groomed into this over time, and we're sticking with it a little bit today because it is actually the first week that you are officially in this role. And so I really do want to celebrate that.
Yes, thank you. I'm very excited and slightly terrified.
And I think that it's important that we are always a little terrified, right? Because that keeps everything fresh and keeps us on our toes. As you've grown your career and your experience inside of the hospital network, really, what's the best part of your role? What is it that gives you value and makes every day worthwhile? Because the last 2 years have been hard.
That they really have. And I enjoy my job. I really have fun doing what I do. I think it's a benefit that I enjoy the people I work with. I love the organization and I love the not-for-profit mission. And really within healthcare, I don't touch patient lives directly, but I hear their stories. I hear the grateful patients. I hear the grateful families given based upon the compassionate care they received. And that means a lot to me. And so in the background, and when I tell my team is, hey, look, we may not be touching a patient, but we are enabling this. We're making sure that the finances of the organization are strong, making sure that the finances of the organization are such that we can allow the company to continue to grow so that there is more ongoing access to patient care. So we're behind the scenes, but we're very important and critical aspect of behind the scenes.
I sort of like to think of it in terms of, Oz behind the curtain, right?
A little bit, yeah.
Right. The magic all happens and, nurses and doctors, right, in the front line actually providing care. But if you weren't being good stewards in the background, pulling the right levers and making the decisions, the
Right.
resources wouldn't be available for that care to happen. So
Exactly.
it's definitely backstage, but it is critical to the success of the patient experience.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. We are coming out of the pandemic, and I really hope that we are truly coming out of it this time. Your team, the hospital that you work at, right, frontline for the past 2 years, working at high levels of stress, nonstop with no real relief. As we're moving forward from that, what are some of those lessons that you've learned that you want to take forward to make the experience better for people coming out of this? What can we learn from it?
It's funny. I like to do what I call the word of the year. And it just so happened that 2020, the word of the year was transformation. Little did we know that our whole lives and existence would transform almost overnight when everybody had to be sent home. I've learned that people are resilient, and that was our word of the year for 2021. People are really resilient. They can come forward and they can survive the things and they can be put to the test, but they need to have resources. And I don't mean financial resources. I mean supportive resources, whether it's support from their leader, whether it's support at home, whether it's that family or friend support. That's very, very important. And we all did it, and there were bumps in the road. We're sitting in our home offices right now as we speak. I've got a cat sitting over on the bed over there. We've learned in the past, you'd be on a phone call with someone and you'd hear a dog barking in the background, and you might think, wow, okay, what are they doing? But now that's normal, right? That's a routine occurrence, and it opens up the conversation in maybe a different manner. One of the things that I've learned that I miss from being home is how much of the small interactions that happen in the hallway or in the lunchroom line or walking in are actually business related type transactional conversations. And we don't have that as much anymore, but you have a cat walk across the keyboard, you have a dog in the back room barking. That enables a different kind of conversation that we now have with people. And I'm mentioned at the front of the conversation, I joked that, I didn't want the psychology degree because I was going to have to talk to people. And I realized I missed really that face-to-face interaction. And I think there's so much from that. And I think there's so much that we can learn from the quality and the value of having that interpersonal face-to-face interaction with people.
And there's the hallway conversations, right? There's some spontaneity, there's some creativity, there's some venting that
Yes.
happens that it's harder to experience in this world because this is structured. It was a planned conversation, right? It's not just, oh, I bumped into you in the line
Right.
at the lunchroom with the idea. As we're preparing, well, actually, you brought up one thing. I want to go back. So you did your word of the year for 2020, for 2021. What was 2022?
I knew you were going to ask me that, and it just totally went outside of my mind.
Oh, I love it. That's awesome. So I'm big on word of the year also. One of the networking groups that I am a part of, we plan around this every year. So I went into 2020 and my word was yes. I was saying yes to things that scared me, yes to things that were new, yes to things that were different. And 2020 was a lot to say yes to.
Yes, it was.
And coming into 2022, I chose thrive, right? We have all survived. And now I want us all to thrive. And that's part of this conversation. And those like this is to have people share those thoughts and those ideas of where we need to go from here.
Yeah.
So, as we're coming back into the world, and it is becoming three-dimensional interaction again. We're not just exclusively in our video worlds. What are some of the challenges and obstacles that you and your team face to move business forward?
There are quite a few. First of all, managing and maintaining that camaraderie. I have team members who are going to remain remote. I have team members who are going to come back hybrid. So how do I maintain that same level of execution that we had? And I'll tell you, my teams were amazing. We actually increased productivity, but not to at least not that I've heard, to the detriment of personal lives. But that's going to be a big issue. Staffing just across the board in healthcare right now is a major issue. And you hear it not only in healthcare, you hear it at different facilities. Restaurants are having a hard time hiring staff. But within healthcare, especially right now, when you have someone who's in a patient care setting who may be exposed to a family member who's belligerent because they're concerned, they're upset, they're worried about their family member, the same person could go down the street and work somewhere else and not have to deal with that. There is some second thoughts happening in the world of caregiving for that very reason. We need to be kind. We need to be patient. But the staffing challenges, we're having ongoing labor inflationary costs. We're having ongoing supply chain costs. I think this is definitely something that impacts everybody right now, but healthcare tends to run on very low margins to begin with. And, you think about it, and I know there are people out there who say, but well, wait a minute, I know how much I'm paying you for my services, but it's, you get your dollar, you get your bill, you've got to pay the doctors, you've got to pay the providers, you've got to keep the lights on, you've got to keep things clean, you've got to get the supplies. Those machines that are taking these images of you for your care and for your continuity of follow-up, they're expensive. And so, all of these things kind of drive into the margin, and it doesn't necessarily mean that we're making more in revenue. And so that's something that's very top of my mind right now, is we want to be able to still continue to give the same level of excellent patient care that we've always given, no matter what organization. I know this is across the board in healthcare because we're here to serve. And, we want to serve, but in order to serve, we have to be able to reinvest in our organization and in our people.
Absolutely. And, you talk about the cost, right? And part of that deals with what the negotiated rates are from payers and the biggest one being Medicare and what we have to do with CMS. So in your role, you have purview kind of through all of that, including supply chain, which is not necessarily always the case. Is that something that is impactful for you in this role?
I am really excited to work with supply chain. On the side, on the periphery, during the height of the pandemic, when PPE was so hard to come by, listening we were having daily huddles and in the hospital systems as a network, trying to understand and escalate issues, and listening to what our supply chain people went through and the extent that they went to in order to make sure that our staff had the appropriate levels of PPE and felt safe and secure. It's remarkable. And I don't know that people truly have a really understanding comprehension of it, because when you have supply chain team members going to, the craft store and buying crafts to create masks for people and to create visors, that just shows the dedication that these team members, again, the peripheral team members who may not be in the frontline patient care, have for the organization and the mission of healthcare as a whole.
Well, and the personal ingenuity and the commitment to safety for the patients, for the employees, for everybody, involved in the interaction in the worst of times.
Yes.
Right. The teams did amazing things. What are some of the cool opportunities that you see for the future?
Wow. One of the things that healthcare has historically lagged in is technology and technological innovation. And with the speed up of the telemedicine that happened during the pandemic, I think we have huge opportunities to continue to make advancements and really to expand access to patient care to those areas where it may be harder for an individual to get transportation to come in and see their doctor for their normal primary care type annual care. And so hopefully as we can expand telemedicine and really grow it, that's going to be I think that's going to be very, very big and innovative. Mm-hmm. I think that what we did in terms of the science behind creating and coming up with these vaccines in such a short amount of time shows us what we really are capable of doing. And, if you think about it, we're 2 years into a pandemic and we're all exhausted by it. We're tired of talking about it, but it could have been so much worse, because you talk about what happened with the Spanish flu way back when, and you look at that and it took a couple years for the full recovery, but there were way fewer people in the world and they weren't as mobile as we are in today. And so I think that really should be celebrated.
Absolutely. While you were talking about the journey and some of the things that happened during the past 2 years, for your teams, you talked about that increase in productivity. And I know that you and I have had the opportunity to touch base kind of intermittently over the last couple of years, just to make sure that I reached out, right? are you okay? Can I help? But you had some good stories. And one of the things that the hospital did during the pandemic was build a new facility, a brand new hospital. Tell me a little bit about the impact of the focus that your team had to that project that was unlike business as usual.
Yeah, a couple of things happened that was just insane. One of the first things, obviously, was we had to shut, at the very start of the pandemic, we had to shut down all of our elective cases. And when you think about it, a heart attack means heart surgery, which to some extent, or if you've got blocked veins, and I'm getting way outside of my realm because I'm not clinical here, but that's not elective, right? No. You're having heart problems. It's not elective, but it's deemed elective. And so, trying to understand that and trying to understand the financial implications of shutting down these types of cases, really, we had our budget planned out for 2020, and then it just was thrown out the window. So we were constantly having to reforecast. As a part of doing the reforecasting, we actually closed our month-end books faster so that we could have better information sooner for the executive leadership team, so that we can understand the impact of the pandemic and the repercussions financially, and what do we need to do to try to maintain our financial stability. We opened up the hospital, and it was previously planned. Obviously, it was underway. It's a 120-bed hospital. We were originally going to open fewer beds, but because of the pandemic and the needs and everything that we were undergoing at that point in time, we opened it just full scale, full bore, instead of our kind of phased in 7-year plan. Mm-hmm. And that helped tremendously in terms of alleviating stress on our other systems and on other areas within the other hospital systems within the greater Phoenix area. It was pretty amazing. And our ramp up of that facility then ended up being huge because we had the access, patients knew about it. Unfortunately, we had patients coming because of COVID, but we were able to take care of them all. So that was just fantastic. Then during the market and during the height again of COVID, we made the crazy decision we were going to issue bonds. We were going to issue bonds because we have another one of our facility that needed additional renovation and work, and we have a plan in place, and the timing of the markets just was good. It was really good. So what normally takes maybe a 6 to 8 month time frame of preparing and going through all of the details and getting all of the financing in place, and we did it in about 4 months, and it was incredibly successful. But I wouldn't recommend it. It was also tiring, but we did it. And so, those are just unique opportunities that happen to present themselves in the midst of this crazy pandemic and the times that we were all dealing with. And we were very fortunate that we were able to take advantage of a positive situation for coming out of that.
Absolutely. And a strong leadership team who was willing to think beyond the immediate scare of where we were at and see the long-term implications of being bold and taking full advantage of what the market was offering. You are part of a remarkable leadership team, but my favorite question is the question I say for the end. And Lisa, if I were to give you a magic wand, and with this magic wand, I am removing all regulatory constraints, all financial constraints, right? We're swinging big. This magic wand is impactful.
Wow.
You have the magic wand. What would you do for the industry as a whole?
First of all, I would patent it. I would patent that one.
Yes. Yes.
But, it's an interesting question, right? It brings into so many different realms of possibility. I think if I had a magic wand, the thing that I would like to do for healthcare as an industry is ensure that we had access to healthcare uniformly, that everybody who needed access could have access to it. And not just healthcare in the traditional sense of healthcare, but mental healthcare as well. I think this pandemic is weighing heavy on all of us. I think we have a whole, population of young kids who have not had the exposure to the social and emotional growth that they would have had during that year or 2 years, whatever it was for them, of actual in-person learning and school attendance. And I do feel that even when they were in person, if they were needing to wear masks, which was 100% necessary, but you lose something with that mask. You can smile with your eyes, but it's still not quite the same as seeing the full face smile and what's really behind that mask. There's a reason why you wear masks at Halloween, is to hide. Right? Yes. So it's become someone different than who you are. But when you're trying to be your normal self and you're in a mask, it's difficult. It's distracting. Young kids trying to constantly fiddle with their masks aren't paying attention to the teacher. So I think, accessibility to healthcare, mental health care, making sure that affordability of it is not a barrier. That's going to be, that would be the big thing, right? The affordability of this care for everybody. And really that I would change and make sure that everyone understood the lasting impact of access to food, access to mental health care, and early childhood abuse, and what that does to a person's overall long-term health. It really, as I'm learning, I didn't have this clue, but as I'm learning, it is a huge component of someone's long-term health. I'd change all that. I'd fix it.
Well, I said swing big. and I guess it saddens me a little bit that in the US, where we have so much capability in healthcare, that we need to use the magic wand to make it accessible to everybody.
Very true. Very
that
true.
Is, part of why we're here having these conversations, because from this type of conversation, we will grow the dialogue into taking on specific topics to have a thought exercise where we actually try and solve for what does it look like to get to that access. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, because this is the first time we've had one of these conversations, that will be coming up as part of this series. Once a quarter, we'll have a panel conversation where we take one of these magic wand ideas and explore actually making it real and what would be involved. So we look forward to that in the upcoming months. Today, with our pilot episode, we are here with Lisa Replogle, the CFO of HonorHealth, headquartered in Scottsdale, Arizona, a fantastic organization, a not-for-profit hospital that is really, truly making an impact in the community. Thank you for joining us, Lisa. This was a wonderful conversation.
I enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Lisa.
You have just experienced Break Everything with Lisa L. Levy. Critical conversations on directed disruption that makes a difference.